everybody. Good evening, and thank you for coming to Gunn Engineering Night. We know people are really busy this time of year, and we really appreciate your presence. We are Jesse McEwen and Shay Mohan, current engineering students at Gunn, and Michael Dresser is leading a team of students who are helping in the booth, which is a really big job. Gunn has many excellent high-profile programs. I'm sure you know about them. Whether it is the spring musical or athletics or choir or orchestra, we enjoy the wonderful work done by so many of our peers.
But engineering doesn't enjoy the same visibility, yet great work is done by all the students in this school, whether it's with robotics or software. But maybe more impressive is where their work can lead. The Newell Award winner Fred Brooks once wrote, "The scientist builds in order to study, but the engineer studies in order to build." Tonight, we'll be celebrating the works of past Gunn graduates for the past 13 years, and we'll see how engineers work in many fields and have incredible opportunity for creativity, making the world a much better place in the process. We'll be hearing from many engineers this evening, after which, their time permitting, there may be an opportunity to talk to them one-on-one outside the theater. Sebastian graduated in 2008, and he spent his time at Gunn doing many different things as possible, as well as after that. He currently works for Pre-Maculture Artisans, a design-built landscape architecture firm focusing on regenerative and land management. He invests his spare time propagating fruit trees and exploring the West on motorcycle. Please welcome Sebastian.
I think Mr. Paley brings me to these things to be the token earthy hippie, so I'm going to try and not disappoint. I'm worried about the way in which we present engineering in our community. I'm worried that what I saw and what I was told as a path in this community was go take engineering classes, get an engineering degree, go work for tech, go make some cool stuff and make a lot of money. Engineering as a way to make things, and I disagree with that. Engineering is a system. It is a method of analysis, of systems design, and it can be applied to a host of things. I want to present to you the concept that what you consider to be the subject of engineering is actually just the smallest sliver of where the method of engineering can take you. Our degraded environment represents a massive opportunity for creative problem solving and real engineering challenge. In our time where we see daily examples of Earth's ecosystems, the climate fighting back against us humans, famine, drought, blight, flood. These are environmental challenges that can be addressed and in many ways ameliorated by brilliant application of the engineering method. I challenge you to two things. One, create the technologies that will address our environmental concerns. Give the practitioners what they need. For example, I work in landscape architecture and land management. My job is to get the client's economic and personal goals for their land in line with the ecological needs of their land. Where I always start is water. To know how water is going to work on a site, I need maps. This is a 3D model of a site we're working on just west of Petaluma. With that, we can determine where surface waters are flowing. For example, on this site, we can determine where there's excess runoff, where there's sedimentation, where there's erosion. This was collected with a LiDAR imaging rig on a twin turboprop plane. It's a brilliant bit of engineering, but it's too expensive, it's too big, it's not accessible. So what I need from you guys is a cheap GPS-controlled quadcopter-mounted imaging rig. Design that solution. Two, engineer these solutions to the environmental degradation we see around us. Deforestation, pollution to our groundwater systems. These are all seemingly insurmountable challenges, but if you get into the doomsday predictions, you can tease out engineering challenges. I think one of the challenges that we see around us really frequently now is the drought. Our current water system in California is so heavily reliant upon state water projects and an ever decreasing reliability of Sierra snowpack, and it's proving to be devastating. Estimated 500,000 acres of fallow farmland just in California this year. we can address these challenges with engineering. If we're talking about drought in California, we really have to talk about agriculture. 80% of California's human-directed surface water flows. And this is the way we're doing irrigation and agriculture in California right now. Inefficient irrigated land, raising inappropriate crops from taking water from overtaxed rivers and groundwater reserves that we don't even know how much is left. This system is illogical, and it's not going to continue. We can either watch it die, or we can design a system that actually works in the long run. We can design agricultural systems that actually function ecologically. It's just a matter of applying the method of design. That 500,000 acres of degraded farmland, you can restore damaged and degraded land and bring it back into production. It is possible. This is just a small example of a portion of the restoration work that was done in the 90s in the Loess Plateau region in China, before and after. You can design ecosystems to mimic natural processes and actually produce production. So back to that project. This site has a lot of interesting areas. One of the areas I was really interested in was water. 40% of the surface water, the rainwater on this site, is moving off into creeks. It comes off as massive storm flows that cause issues with sedimentation and erosion into the creeks. What we need to do is slow that water down, get it down into the groundwater where it can slowly move into the creeks. One of the projects we're doing on this site, we're doing a pond. Bigger, because, you know, might as well go bigger, right? We're going to slow down that rainfall. We're going to put it to economic use, and we're also going to put it to ecological use, restoring the site. And then we won't have to be pumping any more of those groundwater reserves. Another project area, zoomed in here, that river-looking thing, that is a 10-foot deep eroded channel caused by runoff. Towards the right, there's an area where it's collecting into a valley between two finger ridges. We can take that excess water using some good design and some very well-engineered equipment and pull that out onto the dehydrated ridges, spread that water to where it's actually useful. This method is called keyline design. This is a project we are working on. It's a method of soil decompaction that actually can help move water subsurface from where it's in excess to where it's actually useful. This method is shown to increase the growth rate of grasses. As you increase the growth rate of grass, you can actually increase the organic matter content of soils by growing deeper, larger roots. This added organic matter has amazing capacity to absorb more water. Increase the organic matter content of that topsoil by 1%, and you can increase its ability to absorb rainwater by 27,000 gallons per acre. This is hydrological engineering. We can design systems that actually work. Compared to, say, a smaller example of a project that doesn't work. You guys might know this, it's right behind us. It's the creek diversion right here. This is taking water that should have percolated into the ground and putting it into a concrete-lined ditch where it's flushing it out with contaminants to the bay. We're focusing too much water into one site. If you guys remember the 1998 flood, 101, 4 foot of water, 50 houses destroyed, the waste treatment plant backing up sewage into the streets. Our system as it is engineered right now is not only causing damage to the natural habitat, it's also causing damage to human habitat. We can design a better system than this. You don't have to pave, pipe, and pollute all that water. You can let that water percolate into soils. You can consider water as a resource to be designed around, not a method, not a system that you just have to get rid of. An even smaller scale, which my mom will recognize. This is a landscape I did to qualify for a lawn removal rebate. It also happens to percolate in half of the house's roof water directly into the soil, not the storm drain. Plus the trees and mushrooms really like it. Water as a system you can manage yourself. And let's go back to that pasture project in Petaluma. Increasing the organic matter of soils by water management. That organic matter that we sequester into the soil, that's atmospheric carbon. It is brought down from the atmosphere by nature's wonder of a biological photochemical solar cell. blade of grass. That is carbon that is locked in stable soil humus. We can address our water issues in a way that also helps us address our carbon issues. Agriculture can be a climate change mitigator instead of a climate change motivator. It's just a matter of design. And all of this is engineering. It is the method of engineering. What I want you to consider is that there are options beyond tech. That, yes, there are problems to be addressed. Phones have problems, cell phones have problems, clickers have problems, ketchup packets have problems. But there are also problems that will challenge you, engineering challenges that will inspire you for a lifetime. You can work on increasing the efficiency of our electrical grid, of our highway system, of reducing the waste in our food transportation system. Or you can work on this rock. You can work for this rock that gives us life, that gives us this very opportunity to be creative. I want you to consider that as an engineer, don't just work to make a product. Don't just make a living. Be an engineer that works to make our future. Thank you.
Our next presenter is Kartik Chandra. He is a sophomore at Gunn High School. Before coming to Palo Alto, he went to middle school in Bangalore and to elementary school in New York. He took up programming in the 5th grade and, according to his parents, spends far too much time coding. In the rest of his life, Kartik writes blog posts and plays the piano. He loves jazz and is in the Gunn Jazz Ensemble. Please welcome him.
Hi. When I was 5, my parents took me out to go see Finding Nemo. Great movie, except when you're 5, all you remember is this scary scene. So, I didn't really go see any more movies until like 5th grade when I was 10. So, I went out with my best friend and we went to see Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. It's a beautiful movie. I mean, to me, it's not just a great story. Look at this picture. That guy's hair, I feel like I can go and touch his hair and I'll feel it and be able to comb it. Feel if I poke that huge mound of Jell-O, it's gonna wiggle and the reflections will all work right. And to me, this was beautiful. And so when you're a 5th grader, you ask, how does that work? And nobody tells you. So, since you're a 5th grader, you try to guess, well, how does it work? And since I'd been watching too much Nova and stuff, I heard about these things called photons. They're like golf balls, except really small. And so my guess was that what these movie-making people do is they have this computer simulate shooting golf balls. You know, like in Counter-Strike, you can shoot bullets. Here you shoot golf balls into the scene. And you see how they bounce, and you see how they bounce, and that tells you what it looks like. Okay, so when I was in 5th grade, I thought if I held my hand out in the sun, I'd collect photons and then I could like play with them. So don't take that too seriously. But I mean, I don't take it seriously either because that's asking a question, making a prediction, and testing it out. That's science. So I don't really care too much. I got really lucky. The next day, I showed up at school and we get these magazines. They're mostly advertisements for books by Scholastic. But they have some articles, and there was an article about Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. It was great. It told me nothing again. It was an ad for Disney. But what it did give me was a link to this website. This is Scratch. Some of you might have heard of it. We use it here in the intro programming class. It's a website, and the best way to think about it is like YouTube for programming projects. So each of those things that looks like a video, it's actually a computer program, probably written by an elementary schooler. It's amazing. And so for the next 2 years, I learned a lot. I learned how to program, and I made a lot of programming projects, and I made fun stuff, and I made serious stuff, and I made a lot of friends. I probably met some of the smartest people I know. I talked to them today. Some of them might be in the audience looking around. I made a lot of friends. And I forgot completely about movies until 7th grade when I was sitting on the couch and Ratatouille was on. Oops. Ratatouille was on. Okay, again, to me this is beautiful. The fur on Remy, I feel like I can stroke it. And the water right next to Remy, look through the water. You can see the wall behind the water. That's amazing. Like, if you asked me to draw that, I would have no idea how the water makes the wall distort in funny shapes. I just don't know how that works, but somehow this computer can do it. It's like magic. And in 7th grade, I was old enough to try and figure out how magic worked. I opened up Google and I looked up, how does Pixar make movies? And it turns out that what they do is they feed all these models into a computer, and then they shoot these little things, they're like golf balls, they shoot them into the scene, and they look at how they bounce around, and that tells them what it looks like. Yep, same thing. What I guessed in 5th grade is what the Pixar people do. And so I wanted to know more, because this was amazing. This was like, I'm making random guesses and it just works? Come on. So, of course, I wanted to see how it worked. And so the best way to do that is to do it yourself. I tried to write a ray tracer. That's what it's called. It's called a ray tracer, and you have light rays, they bounce off a thing, and you see how they bounce, and that tells you what the scene looks like. I mean, it's a subject of a lot of academic studies. Like, there are professors who get paid just to think about the equations for this stuff. Now, the problem is, I mean, this looks pretty simple, but the problem is, when you've got millions and millions of objects, and like every single piece of hair on someone's head, it takes forever to render. And so when they say computer-generated movie, what they really mean is supercomputer-generated movie. This is the computer that rendered Disney's Cars. Again, great movie. Cars has a running time of, I want to say 2 hours, and it's rendered at 24 frames per second. So that's a lot of frames. Guess how long it took this computer to render one of those frames? It took 7 hours for one frame to render. It turns out that as technology gets better, it takes us longer to render a movie frame because we're just getting that much into detail. We're at the point where we actually simulate individual particles in water when we're trying to simulate a river. So I wrote a ray tracer. I'm really proud of this. This, like, if you wanted to sum up my 7th grade in one image, this would be that image. All right? That's my ray tracer. Now, the story doesn't end there. This is where the story ends. This is me battling this monster in 10th grade math. This is the cross product, and if you haven't had to deal with it yet, you're really lucky. This thing is like, it's a matrix, except some of its entries aren't even numbers, and you take the determinant and you multiply stuff. And if you're really lucky, you get 2 possible answers. Yeah. And so to know which answer is correct, you make gang signs while you're taking the test. Right? And then you pick the correct one. You're like doing this, and okay, I think it's like the positive answer. And you do that, and it works. And so I was taking the analysis test on this, and it was really annoying. And then I got back home, and something bothered me. Something really bothered me about this. So I thought about it, and then it hit me. I got it. These lines of code are from my ray tracer, like not changed at all. That's the cross product. I don't know how I got this. I got this in 7th grade somehow. I was like messing with paper and pencil and variables and lots of algebra, but somehow I got this, and it works. And suddenly it all made sense to me. The cross product, the dot product, all the stuff we're studying in math, you're gonna use it someday, and it's gonna be used in places where it makes sense. You know how there are 2 answers? That's because the cross product, it's the vector that points away from this. But this has 2 faces. You can go this way or that way, so it makes sense that there are 2 answers. And mathematicians decided that this one's going to be the correct one. My code picks this one. So I guess what I really want to say with this is that you don't need to go take a course in engineering or fluid dynamics or computer science. You don't. Some of the smartest computer programmers I know haven't taken a single computer science class. Every single one of you, I'm looking around in the audience, and every single one of you, even my 5-year-old sister there, you're all capable of making something amazing with what you know and what you have the ability to learn with the internet and with all the great teachers and smart people around you. So, go out, make something. Don't get stuck up about which courses you're going to take or whether you're getting an A in math or not, because that doesn't matter. What matters is what you're using it for. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Edwin Chu. Edwin graduated Gunn in 2003. He loves adventures, building fun stuff, and spicy food. After Gunn, he did a master's electrical engineering control systems at Stanford. From there, he spent 6 years at SpaceX, where he designed the engine control computers of the Falcon 9 rocket. He left SpaceX last year to co-found Signal Labs, which is developing new methods to use ultra-low power wireless signals for the Internet of Things. He's currently building a submarine in his spare time. Edwin?
Hello, it's good to be back. So this is me in 2003 when I started at Gunn in 2009 I started at Gunn. These are a couple of projects that I built while I was here. These are electric bikes. In 1999, I was terrified of cars. I didn't want to be around them. I didn't want to drive them. And so I built these to get around, much to the chagrin of my parents, who were afraid that I would catch on fire. Well, one of these later did catch on fire, and none of my cars ever have, so there's that. I graduated from Gunn in 2003 and went to college, where I studied electrical engineering and majored in control systems, eventually getting my master's degree in control systems. After college, I worked at Ricoh, the Japanese printer company, on a prototype e-reader. This was before the Kindle was a thing. And after that, I spent 6 years at SpaceX doing electronics there for the rocket and spacecraft that SpaceX was building. And I am now back in the Bay Area. I co-founded company Signal Labs, and we are researching ultra-low power wireless communication. And what I want to talk to you tonight about is my time at SpaceX. So SpaceX was started in 2002 when I was still a junior at Gunn by this guy. Some of you may recognize him. This is Elon Musk. And SpaceX started when Elon, having sold PayPal, having sold eBay, sold PayPal to eBay, took his money and went to NASA and tried to convince them to let him fund a mission to put a greenhouse on Mars. And when Elon couldn't convince, Elon was unable to convince NASA to do this. He said, here's the money, just send me the bill, let's do it. And he was unable to convince NASA to do this. Well, in the engineering community, you have a lot of do-it-yourselfers. So that's SpaceX, that's Elon, Mars DIY. So Elon set out to do this himself. That image there on the right is an artist's conception of what it might look like to terraform Mars into a planet like Earth that we could live on. The mission of SpaceX is to make humanity a spacefaring species. This is not what you will find officially written on our website, but that is actually what SpaceX is about. The reason for this is the future in which we never leave this planet is a future in which Earth is both the birthplace and the death of life. Eventually, Earth will not be habitable for human life because of the sun, because of ecological damage, or whatever. The only future in which we guarantee that life exists beyond Earth is one where we leave it. And so Elon set upon this mission to do exactly that. A little bit about the history of SpaceX. So in 2008, SpaceX was at the end of 3 really brutal failures. And it was running out of money quickly. The first flight crash landed shortly after takeoff. The second flight spiraled out of control. And the third flight, the first stage rear-ended the second stage, and it exploded. And at this time, we had maybe 2 or 3 months of money left. Elon himself was going broke. It was not looking good. And Elon had a speech. He addressed the employees at this time, and he said to us, "We will find the problem, we will fix it, we will build a new rocket, and we will relaunch in 7 weeks." And everyone started hooting and hollering and cheering, and then it got really, really quiet. And everyone was just, did he say 7 weeks? But we did it. In 7 weeks, we were shipping out a new rocket to the launch pad, and later that year, in 2008, SpaceX became the first private company to completely design and launch a rocket into orbit. That was Flight 4 in 2008. In 2009, SpaceX launched its first, in 2010, SpaceX launched its first Falcon 9 rocket, and later that year launched the very first Dragon spacecraft into orbit. And with that, SpaceX became the first ever, SpaceX designed, built, launched, and recovered a spacecraft from orbit. That is a title shared only by the countries of America, Russia, China, and these 1,500 clowns in a chop shop just outside of Los Angeles. Just this year in 2015, SpaceX launched its very first deep space mission. And SpaceX continues today to launch regular resupply missions to the International Space Station, to launch satellites, and in the next 2 years, SpaceX intends to start launching astronauts as well. This year, just a month ago, marked the 18th flight, the 18th consecutive successful flight of the Falcon 9 rocket, going all the way back to that first flight of the Falcon 1, the first successful flight. So what did I work on here? At SpaceX, as an electrical engineer, I got to design the electrical controllers for each of the engines at the bottom of that Falcon 9 rocket. So each one of those 9 engines has a little computer in it, and that was my project. One of the great things about working at a small company, which SpaceX was at the time, is you get to work on a lot of different things. So I also worked on a few other projects in other parts of the rocket and in this Dragon spacecraft. So what I want to talk to you tonight about is to share some of the lessons I learned about engineering at SpaceX. During my time there, I learned some things about how to go about engineering, and I think that these will give you some insight into how engineering works, what the engineering mindset is like, and for those of you who do go into engineering, you may even find them useful. So the first one I want to share with you is the answer is almost never no. When somebody asks you for something that seems completely crazy, usually there is some pathway, some method, some way that may be equally ridiculous, but there is some way to do it. So instead of saying, no, that just can't be done, you can find out what it will take to make it happen. How much will it cost? What other possibly better solutions will you have to give up pursuing in order to try this one? And how much time is it going to take? And then the question goes from being, is it possible or not, to, is it worth it? And that is a lot of what engineering is. It's weighing different solutions and finding out what things are worth it and what things are not. The second tip I want to give is to build, build, build. To do engineering is to solve a problem using many solutions rather than just a single solution. Don't wait until you think you know exactly what you need to build, exactly what the final product is going to be, to start trying different things out. The reason for this is that you can learn a lot by building things. And the solution that eventually solves your problem might not be the one that you originally envisioned. In Rochambeau, paper beats rock. But in engineering, rock beats paper. You can make better decisions with something in front of you that's concrete than by speculating over designs on paper or worse, PowerPoint slides. The third tip I want to give you is that writing things down is cheap. Bring a notebook, write down conversations. Even better, bring a camera with you. If you've ever taken something apart or worked on a car and you find yourself wondering where that one screw or hose or pipe went, well, you should have brought a camera. If you're wondering what changed between experiment 1 and experiment 2 that made everything, the results different, well, maybe you should have written it down. And it's really easy to write things down than to try and remember them long after the fact. Number 4, it may not be your fault, but it is your problem. This one is an important one. A lot of times in engineering, you may, for example, design 2 pieces, and one of them is designed incorrectly, and they don't fit together. Now, it may be easier to fix the part that was perfect than to fix the part that was wrong. And your part may be the one that was designed exactly the way it should. If you can fix something, fix it. It may be that you are better equipped to fix the problem even if the error was on the other side. A good example of this, Apollo 13, when the astronauts were trying to figure out how to fit that square carbon dioxide scrubber into a round hole, you can bet they weren't worrying about who caused the explosion in the oxygen tank. They were worried about solving the problem. So if you find yourself in a position that you can solve something, then it's your problem, and you can fix it. And the fifth and last tip I want to give you is this one. It will be done when it is ready and not a moment sooner. Engineering projects can be very, very complicated, and schedule is often a source of stress. What you can do is you can break down the problem into individual tasks, make a plan, figure out what all the pieces are to get you from the beginning to the end, and concentrate on just the task at hand. In this way, you can worry about doing what you need to do now and not worry about the project as a whole. You are doing everything that you need to be doing to be successful, and there's nothing you can do to make it go faster. And and that's all I have. I hope that these are useful to you.
Next up, we have Lisa Fawcett. Lisa graduated from Gunn in 2010 and Cornell University in 2014, having studied computer science and mathematics. She currently works at Google as a site reliability engineer on the F1 database team. In her spare time, she enjoys generally being outside and complaining about California weather.
Hi, so I'm Lisa, and as she said, I work as a site reliability engineer for F1. And sadly, the name F1 has nothing to do with cars or Formula One. It's actually an obscure botany reference that's not all that interesting. So what it does have to do with is ads. So I'm going to avoid asking the rhetorical question of if any of you guys have ever seen a Google ad, and just assume that you guys have all seen a Google ad before. So F1 is the database behind all these ads. All of the bidding information and the data, like the text of the ad and all of that, is stored in F1. And to give you guys an idea of scale, so the F1 database system has been managing all AdWords advertising campaign data in production since early 2012. AdWords is a vast and diverse ecosystem, including hundreds of applications and thousands of users, all sharing the same database. This database is over 100 terabytes, serves up to hundreds of thousands of requests per second, and runs SQL queries that scan tens of trillions of data rows per day. So it's a very big database. And while we actually have about 50 different F1 databases, the AdWords database is by far our most well-known and also by far our biggest. We aim for about 5 nines of availability, which basically means that 99.999% of all queries sent to F1 are going to be served, even if there's like unplanned outages, if data centers go down and whatnot. But what does it actually look like? So F1 is a distributed database. It's located in 5 data centers across the US. So each of these data centers basically has a bunch of F1 servers running in them. and these servers are there to read and write stuff to F1. And then everything that gets written to one of these data centers is going to be written to all 5 of them, so that we can lose data centers, lose entire data centers for whatever reason, and we can still serve requests, we can still write and read to the database. So what's special about F1? As I said before, it's a distributed database. It's built on top of another database called Spanner, and how that works basically is that it basically inherits a bunch of features from Spanner and then adds a bunch more features on top. Like one of the big ones is support for distributed queries. Spanner won't let you touch basically separated pieces of information at once, and F1 will plan those queries out and figure out how to find them. But in traditional distributed databases, there's kind of a don't trust the clocks mentality, which basically is you've got these 5 different databases, you've got servers running in all of them, and their clocks don't match up. So if you've got requests being submitted to different different servers, how do you know which one was submitted first? If you've got people bidding on an ad, how do you know who put in the bid first and who should get the slot for the ad? So this is actually a big thing that Spanner gives, is that it has strong global consistency guarantees, which basically means that if Alice and Bob both ask for the same data at the same time, they're going to get the same result, which isn't true in a traditional distributed database. So even though it doesn't sound like a lot, it's actually really important and gives you a lot. So this comes from, the fact that we can do this comes from the TrueTime API, which is based on basically atomic clocks and GPS to tell, and there's one of these in all of the data centers that F1 is in. So basically it gives you it can tell you what time it is with bounded uncertainty. So whereas it's pretty simple API, but where you would ask your watch what time it is and it would tell you it's 5:30, you could ask TrueTime and it would say, well, it's definitely between 5 and 6 o'clock, although we're dealing with uncertainty on the order of milliseconds rather than half an hour or whatever. This is one thing we use the TrueTime API for, is assigning timestamps to requests. So we can have the real time on the x-axis and the clock time on the y-axis. And at any given point, we can take any given point in real time, we can query TrueTime and say, okay, what are the bounds of the what are the bounds of the time that it actually is via TrueTime. So at some point we have a request that comes in, and we're going to call that the transaction start time. And then we're going to put a timestamp on at the latest possible time that it could be when the transaction started. And then we're going to wait until the earliest possible time it could be is at that transaction timestamp. And basically you can sort of reject the request if another request comes in and it might have a smaller timestamp and they interfere with each other. You can reject one of them. And this basically can give us some pretty powerful properties. One of them being if transaction T1 commits before transaction T2 starts, then transaction T1 will definitely have a lower timestamp than transaction T2. And again, this might not sound like a lot, but it's really important when 2 people are bidding for an ad slot that you know whose bid came first. So we pick these timestamps locally at a single server, and then this can give us global consistency across all of the servers, across all of those 5 databases. And we don't have to worry about the clocks being wrong. And we can also then do reads into the past, multi-versioned reads. We can say not just what's Bob's bid for this ad now, we can say what was his bid 5 minutes ago, which is useful in a lot of applications. And the servers always know when a timestamp is stable This is useful if a data center, say, crashes and comes back online and, has to get caught up on all the data that it missed while it was down or whatever. Yeah, so part 2, what is site reliability engineering? This is a question I get asked a lot, and it's kind of a confusing answer. So first, a bit of background about my team. My team is effectively composed of 3 different teams. We've got 7 SREs in Mountain View, another 8 in Dublin, Ireland, and then we have a dev team that's about 8 people in Mountain View. And so basically how it works is that the devs are generally responsible for the actual software of the database, whereas the SREs are responsible for making it run in production. So a big part of this is on call, which basically means one of the Dublin and the Mountain View SREs alternately have one person who takes the pager for the database, or for all of our production databases, which should in theory tell us when things are going wrong. So when the pager does go off, there's then 2 parts to the response. There's the immediate response of basically stuff is failing now, we need to fix it before it gets worse, and avoid cascading failures, which those are really fun. They're basically one server is overloaded, so it dies, and that causes another server to get overloaded because now there's less servers. And then that server dies, and then soon all the servers are dead. So this can be pretty fun, but it doesn't happen much anymore because things have been done to protect that. But then afterwards, so this can extend like beyond the on-call shift. There's kind of an in-depth analysis of like when there's a major failure, we write up like postmortems. And it's a more detailed what went wrong, why did it go wrong, how do we change things so it doesn't happen again. Okay, so what are some of the other things we do? Like I said earlier, we have 7 or 8 SREs in Mountain View and Dublin, and only one's on call at any given time, so we do a fair amount of other stuff as well. Configuration, there's a fair amount of customization for specific use cases. And then automation and scaling, basically getting rid of that customization, because there isn't a ton of it, but like I said, we have about 50 databases that we manage at the moment, and we'd like to scale that to thousands, which we can't do at the moment because there is a little bit of per database work. Monitoring, figuring out kind of what it means for something to go wrong, and setting up the necessary alerts and monitoring so that the pager goes off when something is broken and not when something is not broken. Resource allocation and future planning, that's basically figuring out what resources we need if there's going to be a big launch in the future, kind of making sure that all the resources are going to be there and someone's not going to run out of disk or whatever. And also writing database code. So while the devs are generally responsible for the code, we do, SREs do write a fair amount of code as well, although it's generally in response to failures. Like I've done a fair amount of writing code for like load balancing of queries around clusters that have busy servers. So that's kind of a application that it is database code, but it's sort of like running in production database code. So what makes site reliability engineering interesting? One of the things I like about it is that it's sort of breadth rather than depth. So whereas SWEs, they see sort of a small piece of the code base in a lot of depth, SREs, you don't know what part of the database is going to break, so you kind of have to know a lot more of the code, although in a bit less detail. And then just understanding how things fit together. And everything around the database is always changing, and all the pieces of the database itself change pretty quickly as well. So just keeping understanding how things fit together. Responding in real time to failures is kind of exciting. Things are always more interesting when they are broken. I think this is true. And then unpredictability. You shouldn't really get the same failure twice because you should protect against it so that it doesn't happen again. Although this isn't entirely true in practice. Sometimes things do happen twice, but they really shouldn't. Murphy's Law, when you're operating a Google scale, everything that can go wrong really will go wrong. So we see like lots of 1 in a billion failures like every day. So we have to protect against all of them. Just like in a smaller system, they could just be ignored, but like when you're operating at scale, they will happen. So yeah, thank you.
Our next speaker is Jinna Lay. Jinna graduated from Gunn in 2006 and was part of both GRT and the AP Computer Science program. She graduated magna cum laude in math and computer science from Berkeley and was an NSF graduate fellow at the University of Washington in Seattle. She has worked on towel folding robots, smart kitchen assistants, and computer vision. She is currently a search engineer at Google, where she works on the semantic parsing of natural language queries.
Hi, I'm Jinna. I graduated from Gunn. Unlike some prepared people, I didn't ask my boss what was and what wasn't covered by my NDA. So I'm not going to talk about Google. I'm going to talk about a project I did a year or two ago. Okay. So we take lots of photos. There are a huge number of photos available on people's hard drives, on phones, and more importantly on the internet. People will go to events like graduation or weddings or a vacation. They'll just take photos continuously, and they'll end up with a big pile of unorganized photos. I've seen Flickr wedding albums with 800 to 1,000 photos from just one event, and that's only the good ones from one photographer. So yeah, you just have a pile of photos. And wouldn't it be nice if we had software that automatically labeled photos with what we were looking at? Like, these are photos of a couple saying vows. These are photos of a wedding toast. And this is dancing. So we want to be able to automatically label those. It turns out that, yeah, we can do it. If we tell the computer, here are a whole bunch of examples of what vows look like. Here are a whole bunch of examples of toasts. And here are a whole bunch of examples of a wedding after party. Then it can learn a template and match, incoming photos against a template. So that's been done. The more interesting question to me is, how do we know what categories are even allowed? Can a computer learn what components make up a wedding? Specifically an American wedding, because that's just the easiest thing to start with. Okay. Imagine you're an alien and you have no idea what humans are or why they would get married, but you're given lots of wedding albums to look through. The first thing you might conclude is that human women often look like big poofy white triangles, and human men look like dark suits. But what can you learn about the actual event? You'll be able to see some patterns. For example, two people facing each other and holding hands is a thing that happens, and it happens in a lot of different albums. And you might also notice that it happens at the beginning of a photo sequence. Similarly, someone standing up, among a room of seated people happens a lot. It usually happens often after the holding hands photo. And then the photo sequences often end with people in chaotic photo poses in dark photos. So there are two things you want to leverage. One is that sub-events, and by sub-events I mean vows, toasts, etc., things that make up a longer and more complex event, repeat in different albums, and the other is that photos from the same sub-event tend to look similar across different albums. There's going to be differences in background, lighting variation, point of view and stuff, and that's going to be a pain. But a vows photos is going to look more similar to another vows photo than it does to a toast photo. A lot of the time, not always. So the first thing you want to do is gather data, because you are learning from data. It turns out there are a lot of wedding albums on Flickr. In fact, there were 2,000 wedding albums uploaded to Flickr in August of 2 years ago alone. So why not? We'll just use that. Second step is now you have a whole pile of pixels. And pixels are great. They can tell you a lot. There are machine learning algorithms that leverage specifically pixels, in particular neural nets, but we're not going to be using neural nets here. So we're going to extract representations that are a little less detailed, but a little more abstract. In particular, we're going to find patches of photos, patches that repeat across the photo set, again, leveraging repetition and interclass similarity, and using that to cluster similar-looking patches together. So this is one patch that we find in a whole lot of photo albums, is that the bent sleeve. Now notice this is not the exact visual, this is not what it looks like across all albums. What we've learned are templates, and this is just the first response for this particular template. But like the dark bent sleeve occurs a lot in these albums. Another thing that occurs a lot is a collar with a bent neck, the side of someone's head, and conjoined hands. That happens a lot. And the veil thrown back. I thought that was pretty cool. The next steps, you want to, so now you have a similarity metric. Pictures with a lot of patches in common are similar, and pictures that don't have many patches in common are different. So once you have a similarity metric, you can cluster the photos. We do something called agglomerative clustering, which just takes the two closest photos in the whole data set, smushes them together to make a single point, and then finds the next two closest photos in the data set and smushes them together, and on until you hit some threshold. And then it turns out the clusters you get aren't very good, so you iterate. You do this extracting mid-level patches thing again. With a new similarity metric, you cluster, and then you build on top of those results. So there are licensing issues with some of the photos that I wanted to show you, but I will summarize the takeaways of this project. One is that sub-events tend to shard into multiple clusters based on like the point of view of the camera and say pose variation. Some people do vows holding hands, and in some parts of the vows they're like just standing with their hands at the sides, and that shows up in the clusters. The iteration is useful for purifying noisy clusters. So we got a whole bunch of first dances, or a whole bunch of random photos with the vows and first dance cluster. And the iteration took those away, but it did not add any photos to any of the clusters. And finally, we were sometimes distracted by album-specific detail. Like the background would be very distinct or something, and the algorithm would just say, oh, those are clearly the same thing because it's picked up on this detail in the background. We did end up figuring out that vows are a thing, sometimes more than one type of vows, depending on the angle and pose variation. And some general dancing, but we did not manage to pick up toasts or eating or any of that. Here are my slide or photograph attributions. They're from Flickr. And that is all I have.
Next, we have Susan Nitta. Susan studies mechanical engineering at Stanford. She graduated from Gunn in 2011 and was active in Gunn's STEM community as a member of Gunn Robotics Team and Gunn Girls Tech Club. Currently, she splits her time between working on the Stanford Solar Car Project, mentoring the robotics team at Crystal Springs Upland School, playing violin, and occasionally being a student.
Hi, I'm Susan. As you said, I graduated from Gunn in 2011, so it wasn't too long ago that I was also sitting here in Spangenberg. So I realized recently that I'm now, okay. I don't know. Okay. So I realized recently that I have 10 days left of school, so that means I'm taking a lot of trips down nostalgia lane. So we're going to start with 2007 Susan, where I was just starting Gunn, and these were the 4 things that were important to me. And to put that in marketable skills, I suppose, playing violin for like 2 hours a day meant I had some amount of discipline, and being able to tell you the probability of if I could get 2 red socks out of a drawer of colorful socks meant that I could solve problems. Great. So I vaguely also knew that I wanted to be a surgeon. Didn't really think about it. Any of these were equally likely, except for maybe being an astronaut since I'm too short. So notice that nowhere in here did I ever consider being an engineer, given that nobody in my family really knew what engineering was. So by lucky chance, I joined the Gunn robotics team as a sophomore. I had a very unhealthy fear for hand drills. I remember the first time being handed a hand drill, I just kind of like jumped back and was like, oh, what's it doing? Somehow successfully managed to help construct this first robot. This was the 2010 robot, played soccer. And then the second robot was for my senior year, where it could basically play tic-tac-toe. So after 3 years on GRT, I guess my little red toolbox had these skills. But now I didn't really have a direction because I was rethinking the whole surgeon thing. What I did know after GRT was that I liked to make things. And because I was on GRT, that obviously meant robots. So after 1 year of college, I worked at Willow Garage on the robot development team. And what I did there was working on Project Duckburg. So these 3 robots were named Huey, Dewey, and Louie. And my project was to design and build a tablet mount so that Huey, Dewey, and Louie could roam around hallways and let you Skype in and interact with people like who are actually around the robot. So this was kind of the final version of what I had after my internship. One of the cool features of it was that it had a 3D printed part that had LEDs under it to tell you like, oh, the robot is going to move, so it would flash green. And for my presentation, they had it flash red, white, and blue. Great, so after that, I decided, okay, it would be really cool to make things that actually help people, because these robots were meant to help out seniors in senior homes to like fold laundry and do dishes and whatnot. So the following summer, I worked on a disaster relief robot in Germany at the Fraunhofer Institute. And this robot was supposed to kind of like scuttle around in disaster areas and take data on stuff like whether there were dangerous chemicals around or if there were like signs of life, so that people could then send rescue teams into the rubble. And I always felt that there was something missing about this project, and it wasn't until the following quarter at school when I worked on this fiberglass violin case that I realized what the problem was. And it was that I didn't have enough people around me, and I wasn't working in a team to solve problems. So in terms of where I was going, now my goal was to make things with a team to help people. And here's the running list of skills that I continued to acquire. The following year, I declared mechanical engineering because of the whole making things business, and worked on these projects. The top, I guess, right, is a duck that we actually tested during an open swim session at Stanford. I will never forget the lifeguard's face when all 120 engineers just like walked into the pool with these weird contraptions, and we're like, we're gonna test these right now for our final presentation. Otherwise, the second picture is of a device used to position the knee in an MRI. And the last picture on the side is of a rocket that we actually fired today. This project was one of the more engaging projects I had in school, and it was to help someone out who had an accident with a semi. And he wanted to continue pursuing his active lifestyle of running and lifting weights and whatnot, but given that he was missing 2 of his 4 quads in his legs, he didn't have the strength to extend his leg as much as he had to for either of those activities. So he pitched his problem to one of my classes, and my friend and I got to work on this. And you would think that the hardest part of this was to figure out, like, oh, how does the leg move, and like, how will we ever get the strength to assist him with that extending motion? But no, the hardest part was to figure out a system that he could use easily every day without like cutting himself on the metal or like dealing with 6 different screwdrivers. So that was an interesting project. So last summer I worked at Exobionics, and I was the motion capture intern, which sounds pretty fancy, but my entire summer revolved around moving around cameras to see how the best places to put cameras so that they would pick up signals from the LEDs, then taping those LEDs to myself, and then prancing around and modeling myself as a skeleton. So EXO is really interesting because they make clinical exos to help people learn how to walk again after they have some sort of paralyzing injury, such as a stroke. And I thought that was really cool, and when I got this project, I was a little surprised because I had applied as a mechanical engineering intern, but I wasn't exactly building things. And so at that point, I realized that sometimes in order to build things, you actually have to understand the system that you're building it for. So back to this thing, I wanted to start understanding systems to make things with a team to help people. So on that note, other projects I've been working on to try to figure out the bigger picture is the Stanford Solar Car project. And that is building an entire car from scratch and racing it across Australia. And I literally mean like bottom to top. It's about 2,000 miles, and it'll happen in October. And having to put together a system so complicated means having to understand everything that goes into it, from the basic mechanics of a car and how it's driven, all the way to what is the weather like in Australia? How fast are the winds going to be blowing? And will we actually have sunlight so we can charge our batteries? So that's one thing I spend a lot of time on. And the other thing I spend a lot of time on now is that I've helped start a robotics team at Crystal Springs Upland School. And what that's taught me more than anything is that understanding a system, so to speak, means not just the technical side of things, but also the finances and also what the climate is like at the place you're working at. So, for example, I would say Crystal Springs is not necessarily as engineering oriented as Gunn is. Like, they don't have something like a engineering night. So it's been somewhat difficult to encourage the school to support the robotics team. And of course, the people, there have been a lot of different types of people involved with working with the robotics team. And so this is kind of where I'm at now in terms of skills acquired over the last 8 years and also where I'm headed. And the coolest thing about working with the Crystal Springs robotics team is that it helps me connect back to the person I started out as before going through all of these projects. So, thank you.
Our next speaker is Jin Pan. Jin is a senior at MIT studying computer science with an interest in reliable and scalable systems. He enjoys working on high-leverage software projects and has previously worked on building smart sales tools such as Counsel Genomics, high-frequency trading strategies, and natural language query processing for private data at Argo Technologies. During his time at Gunn, Jin was involved in math circles, competed in the Science Olympiad, and wrote his first line of code in the AP Computer Science class. Jin.
Hi. So I'm Jin. I graduated Gunn, 3 years ago, and studying computer science at MIT. And today I'm going to tell you a story of how a finance group at MIT that I'm involved with fought for autonomy through software. So at a high level, I'm going to introduce what trading simulations are, and what Traders MIT, a student group, does, and our conflicts of a large monopoly. Then I'll briefly describe our solution and talk about the engineering challenges and resolutions we had along the way. These are experiences really common to a lot of engineering projects. I'm really excited to share a story. So first off, what are trading simulation games? So there are games where you just try and buy low and sell high. Alternatively, short sell low and short sell high and then buy low. And they're on synthetic data, and this data is fed to you in real time. So you're not biased by hindsight, where you can easily pick out highs and pick out lows. And through these, you can rapidly teach how markets work. You get really fast feedback on exactly what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong, namely through how much money you're making or losing. And through these trading simulations, you can actually teach pretty big transferable lessons to all parts of life, even if you're not considering a financial career. You learn a lot about statistics along the way, about how to choose features for machine learning. You get to see how a lot of Wall Street gurus are actually wrong, and a lot of them are just spouting gibberish. So it sounds great. What's the catch, you might ask? So the problem with this is that there's actually just a single organization making this simulation platform. And as history has shown, monopolies like to abuse their power, and we're actually on the other side of this abuse lately. So I'm going to switch gears a bit and talk about traders at MIT. We're an undergraduate club, pretty small, about 10, 15 people, it depends on the year, composed of some math majors, some physics majors, finance majors, computer science majors, and even one mechie major lately. And the big thing we do is host an annual fall trading competition. So we invite about 100 students from top finance schools, Wharton, Columbia, NYU, Harvard, and the like. And they all compete, come to MIT, and play a role in this trading simulation game. And we use this Monopoly simulation supplier. And we had really good relationships with them initially. But within that monopoly, their leadership changed a few years ago. And now they're giving us pretty undesirable terms. They're restricting how big our competition can get. And they're demanding thousands of dollars just to use their software. And so a couple of people within traders decided we don't like getting screwed by Monopoly. And we noticed that there's a really low barrier to software entry today. There's a huge number of open source projects, and there is a huge number of very talented people in technology, which make developing software really easy. So I got together with some other people and decided, hey, let's just write our own trading simulator. We called it Mango Core. If you want to know why, talk to me after. We want to mimic the market as realistically as possible, which means you have to make a reasonably complicated thing. So you have to have an exchange which accepts orders and matches them together, account management to track what people actually bought, what they're holding on to, how much risk they're holding on to, and how susceptible they are to volatility. You also have to design a user interface for non-technical people to place their orders. And you also want to design an API for technical people to write automated strategies. You want to have internal traders within your platform providing liquidity in the markets just to make the simulation interesting. You need to provide internal tooling for other non-technical members of your organization so you can design interesting cases that actually show off what markets are like. You also have to write a router to get all the packets sent to the right place. It's a bit more than your standard project. And so I'm going to talk about some of the challenges we faced and some of the resolutions we had. So challenges. So we weren't a startup by any means. We're just a student group. And as such, you're not exactly recruited to build Mango Core. You're recruited because you're interested in finance and you have a mix of, let's say, quantitative or computer science or financial backgrounds. And it's actually really hard to involve everyone. On top of that, because you're a student group, you have a mix of age ranges. You have seniors that are basically checked out and want to do as little work as possible. You have freshmen who don't really know that much going in, and you have to kind of involve everyone's strengths in a unique way. And the way that we did that was we all just kind of got together and helped build each other up. When you have someone really strong in math, but they might not know computer science, you match them up with someone who's good in computer science, and you just pair people's strengths up. You also want to match freshmen with upperclassmen mentors, just get them up to speed. It's really important to not just focus on your product, but you also want to focus on building your team up and keeping them engaged. A huge factor in success of a project is how well your team operates and how well they can cooperate together. On top of that, in a lot of class projects, 90% is an A, which is good enough. Maybe 95 if you want like not an A minus. Or even 60% at MIT will get you an A sometimes. We have some hard classes. But in our case, 90% availability isn't good enough, right? If you have 100 people competing and 10 people can't connect, that's pretty bad. And even 99%, that's like an A plus. Doesn't work for us. We have 100 people competing, one person gets burned. Really sours our reputation, and we much rather just pay $1,000 to keep our good reputation. And so we have to design a very robust product as well and support all the features we mentioned earlier. And in this pretty interesting journey, I encountered some qualities that really stuck out to me as good qualities to have in engineering, in an engineering role. So one really effective engineering property is how some people take ownership in their features. They treat it as if it was their baby. They really want to see it succeed. They want to see it run really well, and they want to see it stand the test of time. And they take care and design things and put a lot of thought into it. They also obsess about complexity. It's really easy to go out and just write something without regard to the rest of your code base and just get it working. But that just doesn't fly for us because we have huge amounts of turnover every year. About a quarter of the club graduates, and we just basically lose them. And so you have to have a very easy to understand, easy to maintain code base, and it really helps if you obsess about complexity and really fight to minimize the amount of complexity you have. Another really strong property is how effective engineers are able to understand the context of what they're working on. A lot of projects, especially those that involve startups, everyone's really busy and nothing is fully specified. And in order to make the best possible decision, you really have to know what's the bigger picture and how do my small little changes and small little decisions that I make impact things on a big scale. And another thing is the show must go on. Competition is at a certain date. We can't just have a feature just lagging if it's critical. And so, some people get blindsided by midterms, get sick, and some really strong people just pick up the slack and make sure the show goes on no matter what. Found those to be really strong qualities in the team. And at the end of the day, we now have kind of a trading simulation duopoly. There's that existing monopoly who had a strong product, and we've actually shipped version 0.1. We had a small little competition within MIT, and it worked really well, really smoothly, and we're probably going to roll it out soon. And so we effectively bought our, or fought for our autonomy through writing this big software project. It was really cool. And as side effects, our group traders at MIT amassed quite a bit of street cred. We're able to attract some of the best engineering talent at MIT to come and work with us. So we have a very strong freshman class as a result of this project. And as for me, it really helped me land my internship at Google Loon. When I was interviewing, I noticed after I applied that the position was only for PhD students. I'm undergrad. And when I asked my manager why I got it, he said, I was really impressed with this trading simulation you led, and that effectively satisfied the PhD requirement. That was really cool. And if there's one kind of takeaway lesson I got, is that when life gives you a challenge, you should accept it with a big challenge accepted, and just do cool things, and more cool things will follow. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Anton Savinov. He is currently an engineer with General Motors, where he works on simulations of high-performance vehicles on racetracks. His engineering education began in Gunn, where he participated in the Gunn Autotech program, the Gunn Robotics team, and the IAROC competition. After graduating Gunn in 2010, he went to UC Berkeley for a degree in mechanical engineering.
I'm Anton, and the slides aren't showing up. Well, we can wait on the slides. I guess I'll be starting with a video anyway. So, quick background about me. I went to Gunn and graduated in 2010. while I was at Gunn, I did Gunn Auto, which was huge for me because I'd been playing with cars since I was born, really. And Gunn Auto was the first time I really got to play with real cars besides my own. And I did robotics, where I realized that I didn't want to just draw cars or drive cars. I actually wanted to make cars. And then I went to UC Berkeley for mechanical engineering, where I did Formula SAE. And Formula SAE is very similar to the robotics team, except instead of building a robot, you build a race car, and then you go and compete with other schools. So then after Berkeley, I went to General Motors, and people are now paying me actual money to play with cars, which is kind of neat. So what I do at GM is I do track simulation of performance cars. To give you guys some background on what I mean by track and what I mean by performance cars, I'm going to start by showing you guys a brief video. So if we could roll a video. Definitely going to want sound on that. It sounds really awesome. So this is the racetrack at where I work, actually. And so this is the main straight. The car gets up to about 160 miles an hour. This is a Corvette. And then you kind of go into the first corner. It's a corner that tightens up, so you have to watch out for that. These are what we call the low-speed S's, a lot of elevation change through here. And then this corner is called the toilet bowl, and it's actually got 30-degree banking on it, and it really loads up the suspension. So you see about 2 Gs in cornering and 2 Gs in vertical loads through there. It's really intense. This corner and the corner right after it we call the perumps, and those are actually long, steady-state corners that really work the oiling system in the engine. So the constant corner will actually push all the oil away from where the pump is supposed to pick it up, and then the engine starves of oil and dies. I wish we had sound on that video, but in any case. So I'll talk a little bit more in detail now about what I do. So what you just saw was the real thing, right? That was an actual Corvette going around a racetrack. That cost GM many thousands of dollars to do, but we still regularly do it when we need to. But there are many times when we don't need to do it, and we don't want to spend the money on it. So my job is to do what just happened in the video virtually. So GM builds dozens and dozens of different cars, but among them are also cars that we consider to be track-capable cars. So these are cars that GM believes customers will actually take them to racetracks, and we believe that the success of the cars in the marketplace hinges heavily on how well the car performs at the racetrack. So we design to racetrack use. Now, when you're building a car to be fast, there's a lot of things that you need to pay attention to, a lot of things you can change about a car to make it go faster. For example, you can put a bigger engine in the car. That'll make more power, and that'll make the car faster. But then, when you put that bigger engine in, that bigger engine needs more cooling, that bigger engine is on its own bigger, it weighs more. More mass means the car is slower. So there's a balance, right? You get more power, more weight. So overall, does it make the car faster or no? It's a good question. You could put the engine in the car and find out in real life, but if you don't have the car yet, or if you don't have the engine yet, you can't do that. Or if you don't want to spend tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars doing that, use simulation. So what we do is in simulation, we build a car. So we start by putting in numerical form. This is all numerical. The overall size of the car, the mass of the car, where the mass is distributed. we take the aerodynamic properties of the car, we put it in the wind tunnel and figure out how much drag, how much lift, et cetera, the car has. Or if we don't have a real car yet, we'll just simulate that too in a separate simulation. We look at the engine. So how much power does the engine make at different speeds? Now we look at the suspension of the car. How does the suspension move the wheels, et cetera? And finally, the most important part is actually the tires of the car. So if there's any single component on a car that determines how well a car drives, it's actually the tires. The tires are a very complicated model because a tire's behavior will actually change based on its current conditions. So if it's got a lot of load on the tire, it's going to have different amounts of grip than otherwise. So in my model, it all kind of just looks like graphs. But it represents a race car. So we take all that and we build essentially a physics problem, a math problem really, and put it into the computer and we solve the math problem. What do we get? Got a bunch of graphs. So now, after I build the model, my job is to look at these graphs and figure out what's going on. So you can kind of see in the top graph, there's the green trace, and then there's a fainter blue trace that occasionally deviates from the green trace. So both of those traces represent they're the same car, but with slightly different aerodynamic properties. And on the racetrack, they're going at different speeds in different places. So my job is to figure out, well, why is it doing that? And did that make it faster? And if it did make it faster, is that actually going to happen in real life, or is that just something that happens in simulation? So what I do is a little teeny tiny part of what happens at GM. GM's a huge company. And cars are really complicated. Cars have a lot of stuff in them. This is actually a cutaway of the new Volt that's coming out. And you can see the engine in the front. Then in the middle, there's batteries and things. And you can see suspension components out around the wheels. Every one of those components has an engineer or 2 or 10 or 20 working on just that component. Not only that, but there's engineers who work on those components when the car is still kind of being architected. So there's engineers that work on those components purely in the virtual world, kind of like me. And then there's different engineers that will work on those components once you build the first prototypes. And then there will be another set of engineers that will actually work on those components after we build the very first cars that look just like the ones we're going to sell. And they figure out, oh, well, did this component actually perform as well as we thought it would? Is it doing what we want it to do? Is it as good a car as we need it to be? So there's a very wide variety of things to be done. Mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, materials science engineering, computer engineering. One big thing that people often don't realize is that when you're inside the car and you have your touch screen in the middle, or if you have a newer car, you have a touch screen in the middle, there's engineers at GM who need to figure out how to make that work. So that's computer science, electrical engineering. And then actually, that video that you saw, I don't know if you noticed, but the guy driving the car was also an engineer. So the guy driving the car was a chassis controls engineer, so his job is to make sure that all the active controls in the car, stability control, traction control, work as they need to. And as part of his job, he drives the car on a racetrack. So if you want to go be a race car driver, you could actually go be an engineer. So that's all I got for you guys. But if you guys have any questions about automotive industry, how to get into it, what goes on in, behind the scenes, I'll be around afterwards. So come by. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Nitsan Shai. Nitsan is currently a senior studying electrical engineering, computer science, and music at Carnegie Mellon University. However, he has 2 more years of school and will be graduating in 2017. That's what his presentation will be about. Nitsan?
Hello. Well, that's loud. You can turn that down if you want. How's everyone doing? Long night, but it's fun. So this is my 3rd time up here, but I'll try to make this quick. So a little bit about me. I promise it matters. I just finished my 3rd year at school, and I work in the academic development department in my school, Carnegie Mellon. And it's actually its own separate department, separate from like the computer science department or the material science department, whatever have you. So it has staff and it has student workers, and it provides supplemental instruction, which is like large group tutoring. It provides Excel groups, which are small group tutoring. It provides one-on-one tutoring, which is peer tutoring. And it also provides a service called walk-in tutoring, which is there's a room full of tutors, and if you want to get help, you go ask for it. I just recently was promoted to be the student supervisor of this department, so that means I'm in charge of all the students that will be tutoring lots of people, and we mostly have, like most of our clients, are underclassmen. So with that, I learned a lot about the academic development department this semester as like an incoming training student supervisor. So this presentation will be about the problem that I am working to solve with this department. So this is what the conclusions of my presentations will be. So I'll say them now, I guess. Technology can improve lives and solve problems. People don't know that technology can assist with difficult tasks, so they don't look for solutions. And engineering is not just about Google and Facebook. So let's see if what I show you actually says this. So learning in Excel. So this is a little bit, I said this a little bit earlier, so Excel is a small group tutoring thing. It has weekly appointments, so you sign up for a session and you get tutoring once a week, and it's really great. We have 300 students per semester, which is actually quite a bit considering our campus size of 5,000 undergrads. Statistically, the strategies used in these sessions are proven to help. In the sessions that I've been leading for the past 4 semesters, students in my sessions have had an over letter grade average higher than people not in the sessions, so that's pretty significant. And we use what are called collaborative learning techniques, which are like specific techniques marketed to making you learn better and learn with others. So as I was meeting with my student supervisor this past semester, I saw a big pile of paper on her desk, about that big. And I realized that these are paper sign-up sheets to sign up for an Excel session. And what these sign-up sheets have on them is all your like normal student information, and along with your schedule, which students would mark with like X's and checks. And my my supervisor had to, by hand, go through these and find sessions for the people that signed up for that specific course that match also a tutor's schedule and also matches a room that is available for that session to hold on to. So that's a lot of things to kind of put together. And she was doing these things by hand. So she was going through like a pile of paper that big and sorting them out by hand. And I asked her why she did that. And she said, well, there's no other way to do it. So I asked, like, what if I told you that I could make one of these things that would do it? And she was very doubtful at first because I'm a 20-year-old kid trying to solve a problem that she's been dealing with for years now. And I think it's just something that has never crossed her mind of like, how can, there's no other way to do this, right? But I think if you guys know, some of you, if you took AP Computer Science, you know what hash tables are. This is a very straightforward hash table problem, right? You stick all your schedules in a hash table, and you find the one with the biggest matches, right? And there's your session, right? So you stick the leader schedule, you stick the student schedules, you stick the room schedule all in there, and then that's your solution, right? Pretty simple. But as other people mentioned, there's a lot of stuff that have to be done to put the technical stuff and make it available and accessible to everyone. Yeah. So, wait, where were we? Yeah, so this was the first problem that I noticed, right? And I was like, okay, I can probably solve this. This is the second problem that I noticed, and this is a school problem, and this might look familiar to a lot of you. Students take on difficult schedules. They do a lot of things outside of classes. They're really afraid to ask for help, and they don't know what they're getting themselves into. Yeah? Kids? Cool. Yeah, so this was very familiar to me. So I wanted to do something about it. There's a disclaimer there if you want to read it. Please come to Carnegie Mellon. It's awesome. So students coming in especially don't know a lot about courses and about the resources available at CMU, like the tutoring program, but also things like the faculty course evaluations, which tell you things about how classes are going. Also, the fact that it's advertised that like the number of credits you that a class consumes is equal to the workload of the class, which is rarely true at Carnegie Mellon, at least. And there's also no like intuitive quantitative way to measure how much time you have in the week and how you're distributing it in your schedule, right? So I looked at these two problems, and I thought I could solve both of them, and I still think I can. And we'll find out in 2 years if I did. So what if there was this online registration system for the small tutoring groups, and what if it like automatically and automagically, if you will, would find these sessions and give my coordinator time to actually work on things that matter, like making this program better. And what if alongside it, I could make this system that would allow you to input your class schedule and really see the real workload of your schedule and evaluate how much time you will actually have in terms of free time, extracurricular time, how much sleep are you going to get, are you going to have time to eat lunch on this day of your week, things that often you don't think about when you're off in college and your mom doesn't make you lunch anymore. And what if these two things could kind of live together? And what if they could, for example, knowing what resources are available for the classes you signed up for, what if it could show you that in your schedule, right? What if you could get holistic schedule reviews in the sense of like, not just like how did this class go, but how did the schedule go? So I took an opportunity, or I found an opportunity in my email 2 weeks before the deadline for the application for this, this is the short story. You get a 5th year at Carnegie Mellon. You can take whatever you want. You work on a community impact project, wink, wink, nudge, like nudge, nudge. That's kind of what I described. And you get to go for free for a 5th year. So I applied to this. I got it. So now that's why I'm staying for another year. I'll be working on this project. I already started working on it. So I have 2 years to work on it. And yeah, hopefully I'll be able to make a difference. So I don't have anything yet. But it's exactly what I described to you, right? So it's this place that will be able to help students, especially incoming students that really have never been to Carnegie Mellon, be able to understand resources and sign up for resources very easily and hopefully make their lives a little bit easier. So looking back, technology can improve people's lives and solve problems. People don't know that technology can assist them with difficult tasks, though they don't often look for solutions. Engineering is not just about Google and Facebook. I came up with a few more. Engineering solutions can cause culture shifts. My hope with this thing is that people stop signing up for these crazy schedules, right? My hope for this is that we have a culture shift of not pushing each other so far that we get into trouble. Another part of this is preventing stress as opposed to reducing stress, right? Never getting in a stressful situation in the first place is something that I really value. Engineers are needed in every field. This is going to be a web development project, which I've never done before. I mostly focus on like systems and other things that are not related to this, but like I'm figuring it out. I'll figure it out, maybe. Things that were once impossible are now possible. Like the best solution I can come up with without a computer for the schedule problem is like make every schedule into a transparency and then put them on top of each other and look for a hole, right? But this is now possible without that. And engineering and you in general can make a difference even if you just help one person. Even if I just help my coordinator make her job easier, then I did something good. I'll be outside later, and thank you.
Our final speaker for the night is Sam Wood. Sam graduated from Gunn in 2006 and received his BS in computer science from UC San Diego in 2010 and his master's in computer engineering from UC Santa Cruz in 2014. The body of his graduate research was conducted under the DARPA CBMN program and focused on routing wireless and ad hoc networks. He previously worked for several startups and larger companies including Yahoo, Apple, SRI International. He currently builds web applications for Tesla Motors. Sam.
Good evening. So today I'm going to share with you my experiences doing engineering over the past decade and where it's taken me. So presently, I work for Tesla Motors, and I build web applications for the global service operations. So that's a department within Tesla that is responsible for servicing all the vehicles. So there are hundreds of service centers all throughout the world, and there are technicians that work at those service centers that are responsible for repairing the cars. And so there's this large logistics problem of shipping tools around and making sure that all the technicians have the proper training they need to service the vehicles. And so I build internal applications within that department that helps with those problems. Outside of that, I've been spending, in my free time, I've been spending over the past year and a half working on this Bitcoin-related company that is trying to digitize contracts in a way that that goes beyond just uploading PDFs in the cloud. And so Bitcoin is a technology that's kind of come out over the past few years that it's been really popular in the press. It has a lot of negative publicity, unfortunately, but it's a really brilliant piece of technology from an engineering perspective. So I'm interested in distributed systems, and Bitcoin has solved some fundamental problems in distributed systems, and right now it's being used as a currency, as a store of value, but I think there are ways we can build upon the protocol and do digital contracts that use this distributed public ledger that Bitcoin builds. So the idea is that instead of having these pieces of paper that we fax around and we have to go find lawyers to draft up or go through go find some template that's been drafted up for us, I want to kind of move into a world where contracts are things that we can just anyone can pull up without having to be have to have a law degree, and they can exist as algorithms in the cloud, and that's sort of my attempt at getting there. So I can talk more about that to you if you approach me after the presentation. So to give you some background about kind of where I'm coming from. So yeah, in 2004, all throughout high school and middle school, I was really into video games, and especially into Counter-Strike. I played it a lot, and I wanted to have my own servers to host the matches for my team or my clan, and to do that, it meant that I had to pick up Linux administration stuff, and I had to learn things like computer networking. I had a bunch of friends at Gunn that wanted to play Counter-Strike with me, and so we would get together and have LAN parties. And to do that, we had to learn how to connect the computers and learn the basics of computer networking. Then I took Mr. Paley's AP Computer Science class and learned a lot. It was a really hard class for me. And but then kind of it just enriched and deepened my interest in computer science. And so I went to UCSD, did studied computer science there for a number of years, and I worked for a professor there. He had a startup company as part of the university, and I did some testing and QA stuff. And then from there, I did an internship at Yahoo and did some what's called A/B testing and some statistical analysis on different Yahoo pages. They want to determine which version of the page gives better results in terms of clicks and on ads and things like that. So I helped build some software there. Then I decided to go to Bangalore, India, and I worked at a company there. This was kind of during a time when there was a lot of hype about all of computer science being outsourced, and people were telling me that Bangalore is the Silicon Valley of India. So I decided to go there and see what that was about, and had a great time. From there, I went to UC Santa Cruz to do a PhD in computer engineering. in computer networks in particular. And prior to jumping into my research, I did an internship at Apple where there's this Apple product called iTunes Match where you can upload your music libraries into the cloud and it'll match the tracks that already exist in the iTunes store. And so I did some data analysis on that where we wanted to keep track of like which tracks were popular and kind of where to cache tracks and stuff like that. So I did some work there. And then as part of my graduate work, which I'm going to talk a little bit more, I did an internship at SRI, which they've done a bunch of cool research. There's this one scientist, Douglas Engelbart, who I really recommend if you're interested in science and engineering, looking into him. And he has this demo on YouTube called The Mother of All Demos, where in the 60s, he's demonstrating like the internet and video conferencing and telecom, like all these technologies that we're only kind of starting to see. So I recommend checking that out. I took my research and turned that into a master's, and now I'm working at Tesla Motors. So as part of my graduate work at UC Santa Cruz, there's this interesting problem called where it's called the last mile problem in computer networks, where you have all these devices like your laptops, cell phones, PDAs, and they have all these different types of interfaces. But if you're in an environment, like if there's an earthquake or you're in a war zone or something like that, you don't have cell towers and you don't have access points, it's really hard to communicate with people at all, and if at all. I mean, there's some apps that have come out recently, like Open Garden has an app called FireChat, where you can form these mesh networks on the fly on your cell phone. But it's really a kind of a developing area that doesn't have a lot of good solutions for us. So there's no technical reason why you shouldn't be able to form an ad hoc network when there's an earthquake and there's no cell towers or access points and be able to communicate with people. It's more of this massive engineering effort that's preventing this from happening. So DARPA, which is a branch of the DoD, and they fund these sort of, I don't know, crazy idea projects, if you will, ideas that require a huge amount of effort in terms of financing and engineering that they don't see coming out of industry. And like you may have heard, like some of the DARPA challenges. And this was a part of that, or not a DARPA challenge, but it was part of a DARPA program called CBMen. And what we ended up doing is we built this system where you could have a network of our networks were about 30 nodes, so it was pretty small scale, but you would have groups of people in teams of like 5 people, and they would be walking around, observing things, taking photos with their cameras or videos, and then sharing those photos. And we devised a way where that content could be shared in a situation without any fixed infrastructure, and we demonstrated that. And the key idea that we used was, instead of thinking of computer networking as this form of communication between computers, so instead of it being like you calling a phone number and then talking to someone at the other end of the line, we treated the network more as a distributed database. And instead of talking to computers, you talked to content. And by kind of changing the way we thought about the problem, that let us do all these cool things like in-network caching, and it was able to accomplish that problem. Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Josh Paley. I teach computer science here at Gunn. This is the end of the program. I'd like to thank all of our speakers, not just for coming back. I know you guys are all busy and I appreciate your time, but thank you for getting really cool stuff done. So, thank you. Please. I'd like to thank the students who helped tonight, everyone from the timekeeper down here to the students up in the booth. Thank you guys. And with that said, let's go outside. And if you have any questions, hopefully some of the speakers will stick around.